What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 2 of the Portside Podcast. I'm your host, Mia G, and today I'm going to be stepping back. And you guys are going to be stepping into an interview with a guy named Tommy Phillips. Tommy has been in the industry since the 1980s when he started his ski shop, Slalom Ski Shop, down in Florida, then expanded down to Colorado. And it's honestly an amazing story of entrepreneurship, and also you get to see a glimpse into how boats have changed, how boards and brands have evolved. And Tommy's going to fill you in. Meanwhile, I won't see you guys until episode 3 when we talk about trailering, hooking up, backing up, all the good stuff. So here we go.
We have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Tommy Phillips here.
Well, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you very much. What an honor to be here with you today.
For, again, those that don't know, Tommy's, that the people know of now, which is the 15 dealerships, I believe, across the nation. Tommy Phillips was the original Tommy, and it was originally Tommy's slalom shop.
Correct.
And also a surf shop, correct?
Well, I'll back up just a little bit. I got my first ski, I think, in 63 or 64. Herb O'Brien was my brother-in-law.
Okay.
And, we'd always been around the water, but mostly fishing and playing. And I wanted to slalom ski, and lo and behold, I got this incredible wood masterpiece from him, and started going to Grapevine Lake with my friend Larry Glover and started slalom skiing and just loved it. Well, I sold 2 or 3 back then. Buddy had seen me, well, hey, can you get me one of those? And then years.
What year is this?
This is about 1963, 64, back in that period. So, back when the Flintstones were boating.
We hit another houseboat.
Okay, what happened? That landlubber tried to make a starboard turn without sticking his hand out.
And anyway, later on, I remember my sister telling me that, she made about $65,000 one year out of the garage. And I'm thinking, man, I'm a guitar player. I make $50 a night. This sounds pretty good. I think I'm going to order some skis, because Herb had just started HO. He had sold O'Brien, and I got a ski, and I went down to Sloan's Lake, and I sold it in about an hour and 10 minutes, and I made $50. I got fed, I got to ski behind their boat, and I met a couple of real nice girls. So I'm thinking, man, so I ordered another one, right? And I went to Stanley Lake, and believe it or not, my second customer was Leif Swenson, who ended up being the Malibu dealer and then the Mastercraft dealer later in years, and I'll just leave it at that. So that was kind of the beginning of Denver, and then I think in 2 years, I was just about his largest dealer out of my house.
Right.
I'm getting UPS trucks, and I'm going to the lake and delivering them, and I think I was 2 years into this, and I made decision. I said, man, if I could do $5,000 at the boat show, I'm gonna rent me a space and give this a try. Well,
what year do you think this is now?
81.
81.
Yeah, or 80. No, maybe 83 by now. 83 by now. I've been doing quite a bit of business out of the garage, and they moved me behind the taffy booth at the Sport Boat and Travel show that was really a pretty rough show back then, I'll just say that. I got moved up to the aisle. And lo and behold, I do $18,000 worth of business. I got a new clutch. I got new tires. I think I got insurance for my truck. I got all the stuff you couldn't get at $50 a pop. And so and the address was 2520 North Sheridan Boulevard, right around the corner from Sloan's Lake. Well, a year goes by, and the guy next door moves out, so we punch the wall out. The next guy moves out, I punch another wall out, and then I rent the upper end of the building, and it's just mad chaos there. And I sold a couple of ski Centurions out of there. I knew those guys, and they would sell me one boat at a time, and I'd make like $400 on it. Boy, that's a lot of money back then. And I said, I got to find a bigger place. I think I'm going to try boats. And another miracle happened. Norm Speak, who I'd got to know, he was the Mastercraft rep. And he had a pretty good reputation. And Herb always told me, he says, hey, you need to get to know Norm, and he'll be a good mentor. So I got to know Norm, and I just started following him around, and he kind of adopted me as his other son. He had a fabulous son, Steve, and daughter Trudy, that were amazing skiers. Well, I was a complete idiot. He had to teach me everything. Had to teach me how to work on the boats and how to back them in right, and how to drive a straight line in the slalom course, and I had a lot of that help. Well, Norm, one day he says, hey, what do you think about being the Mastercraft dealer? And I'll just, I'll work for you, and I'll sell the boats and everything. And I said, wow. So this is summer of 1985. We fly to Knoxville for the big Mastercraft meeting. And I mean, everybody in the world there, every world champion skied for Mastercraft. And at the time, they had every world record behind this particular boat.
Was it so these would be the years of the Stars and Stripes?
Well, it was the year they transitioned out of the Stars and Stripes to the Swirl. I'll never forget when they pulled that velvet, cover off the boat. Everybody went, what's this, And they added a TriStar boat to it too, which is 18 feet, closed bow, but it was wide and supposed to go for the recreational market. It wasn't received real well, but I bought one. And I bought one Pro Star, and I was off and running again, and we sold off of that. And I sold primarily to tournament skiers. And up the street, there was a place called Coy's Wheel and Tire that was the perfect location. I mean, they had a building, they had a fenced yard, they had everything there. It was a mess. But I
was Sheridan and Denver.
Yeah, up there at 3740 North Sheridan, right up the street. So I went up there and I inquired. Nah, we don't want to sell it. Nah, we don't want to rent it. We don't want. No. Well, a year later, they come to me begging me, and I said, well, I don't really have very much money. What do you guys want? And they gave me a ridiculously good price, way better than I had offered them before, by about 75 grand better, and said they'd carry the note. So man, I'm in like Flynn. They're carrying the note because my credit was zip, being a guitar player. And I got that place, and I got a bunch of guys. There was this guy, J.D. Franick. Him and his dad and family went in there after hours because we didn't have any permits, and we just, blocked out the windows and everything and pretended we were cleaning up. Well, they redid the electrical, and I got a bathroom put in, all this stuff without permits. So
back when you could get away with those kind of things.
Never get away with it now. But anyway, that started growing, and I have one cool part of this I should probably say is in '83, I went to the Chicago Boat Show, and I didn't know anybody, man. I was lost there, but I'm walking around like a complete idiot, and I'm pretty good at that. And I see this surf ski thing. They had 3 of them. And they had brought this thing over from Australia, and I said, man, I think that's pretty cool, And at the end of the show, I went in there, and they still had 3 of them left. And I said, you know what, I'll buy 2 of those. And they shipped them to me, and I took them to Sloan's Lake, and this guy, Dave Roberts, was the only guy that could get up on one. And I sold him one, and I kept the other one. Well, the next year I went back to Chicago, and Tony Finn was there with Scurfer. So I immediately jumped on it, And out of the blue, I was immediately the largest Scurfer dealer in the world.
So this is, for the listeners who maybe are new to boating and different things, we'll talk about it in a minute, kind of the transition from water ski to wakeboard to now surfing. Scurfer essentially was the first wakeboard. But if I remember right, I was still very young at this point. But Scurfer, originally the idea was kind of to surf the wake behind the boat.
Yes.
But then guys started jumping it from wake to wake and started breaking a bunch of boards. And tell us more about that.
Yeah, so that was the idea. Everybody wanted to surf behind the boat. I mean, we tried it in 1964 at Grapevine Lake because I had a 9-foot surfboard. And we went out there, and I remember because the wax melted all over my buddy's boat, and I was panicking because his dad didn't like me anyway. So anyway, that's kind of how everybody wanted to surf. So we started selling the Scurfers, and you couldn't do a lot on these things. I mean, they were really hard to get up on, and I demoed them, and anybody that wasn't really a good waterman, they couldn't get up on it, so it was starting to nosedive. Well, in this process, I met Jimmy Redmond, and I met him from a dealer in Texas that knew him. He said, hey, this guy's got a way better board. Why don't you call him? And I called Jimmy up, and I became his second dealer, and I ordered 2. I mean, I stepped up to the plate. I took that thing to Stanley Lake, and this guy, Butch Bendel, this hotshot snowboarder dude, he's a wild guy, man. I mean, this guy build jumps and jump really irresponsibly 100 feet in the air and things. So he takes this thing out, and he immediately just rips this thing. He's catching these whole airs and everything, but he puts his foot right through it. Well, I get him.
This is on Redmond's board, or this is on the Scurfer stuff?
This is Jimmy Redmond's new board.
Okay.
But anyway, Jimmy says, I've got all this fixed and everything. So I said, you know what? Why don't you come to the Denver Boat Show? And I put Tony Finn on one end of the booth and Jimmy Redmond on the other, because I was afraid they were going to kill each other. Because they're total opposites. Jimmy is molecular structure of the sun, and Tony is a salesman. We'll just keep it at that.
For the newer boaters, there's still mini wakeboards, probably more from Liquid Force at this point, that will still on the bottom of a wakeboard. It'll say a Redmond design. There's still many. I would have to verify that, but I'm pretty sure many of them are still designed by Jimmy.
Oh, Jimmy's still active, and he's an amazing human being. And finally I said, well, I better break the ice with these 2 dudes. And I felt like I was at a prize fight. I walked them both to the center of the booth, said, hey, you guys, Tony, this is Jimmy, this is Tony. Now I need you guys to get along, I know you're competitors here. Well, they shook hands. And they walked off and had lunch, and they were best buddies immediately. And I'm going, wow, I never expected that. I figured Tony was going to be really mad at me for bringing another guy into his booth. Anyway, they became buddies, and you know the story of that. They did Wake Tech shortly after that, and of course Herb, to insert another piece of reality, Herb and I are on the lift at Beaver Creek riding up snow skiing. How come those Scurfers don't sell real well, Tommy? And I said, because nobody can get up on one. And Herb goes, well, what if we made one like a ski and it was neutral buoyancy and anybody could get up on one? I said, yeah, if you could make one. And he had been making a few sky ski prototypes for Mike Murphy. So he knew how to make the mold wider. And he went to this place, Beaver Machine. And at Beaver, they designed the new one. And in this whole process, Eric Perez got involved. I'd met him at the first Scurfer Worlds in Hawaii. And I got on the phone. I said, Herb, I got the guy for you here. This is the dude you need to know. He shapes, he knows all the the Shapers in Hawaii, and he just won the tournament. And he can actually do a backflip on one. So that's when we got the first compression molded one. And as soon as I got that board, what's funny is I came to the Pueblo Boat Show, you know, when it's out here at the State Fair. And they had to build that ramp, you know, and you had to get your trailers and boats down there. And I had a TV about this big that I could plug that Scurfer, or not Scurfer tape, but Hyperlite tape in. And I sold like 45 boards. I mean, to me, I'm making a fortune, right? And it just kept growing, Nick. So the thing is very few people belong to a private lake like I'm privileged to own now. So the slalom thing and competitive water skiing thing was just creeping. It wasn't really growing at all, where this new sport was going out the roof. And no time long, I had a few local tournaments. I had the first one in '86 at Soda Lakes, which was really cool. And Bob Jessen actually had the concession there, and we were kind of partners in it. And then the next year, Chuck Blood was awarded it. But we had some success with those early tournaments. And I called up Terry Dorner from Water Ski Magazine, one of the promoter guys, the salespeople that worked for Terry Snow. And I said, hey, man, you guys ought to think about this and put this on the water ski tour, because this is going to be the next big thing. And that was probably a mistake. I should have kept that diamond, but I gave it to him, because next thing I know, they're back in my backyard wanting to charge me like $3,000 for a booth. And I'm going, wait a minute, I gave you guys this idea. Well, you know, I went over like a lead balloon. And that's how the whole tournament thing kind of grew into its own. Just a few days ago, I was gifted a t-shirt. My friend Kendall Curtis here in town, you see his name on Remax, all these commercial buildings. He brought me a t-shirt from the 1993 Worlds in Dallas. We had it at Colorado Springs in '92, and I had the show skiers, and we had slalom skiers, and we had the '92 Worlds, and we had Eric Perez and Scott Harwood and all these guys from Kidder, and of course Darren Shapiro, who came and slayed everybody on it. And this thing, the wakeboard deal's just going crazy. All of a sudden you go to the boat show, and 20% of the boats there had either pylons, the extended pylon, or the tower on it. So that was really pretty cool watching all that. And I remember the last time I went to a show, I saw you there. I think every boat in the place had a tower on it, right? I mean, pretty much. Have you seen anything advertised at the show that doesn't have a tower?
Even the pontoon boats nowadays, right?
Yeah, everybody's getting in on it.
It's crazy how those things change over the years. And again, for the viewers who are just getting into the boating world and into surf boats and wake boats, like we started with those little water ski boats, the Mastercrafts, that were really low slung, flat bottom boats designed for the private water.
The smallest wake you could get.
The smallest wake you could get, and the one that made no wake at all was the Winner. That's the boat that everybody wanted, right? And then you progress. You talk about the Scurfer coming along, and that progresses to Wake Tech and Redmond and Finn getting together, and then the wakeboard thing comes. You get it on the tour, and so when that started, and I don't remember the years, maybe that was '92 in Springs, the first time wakeboarding was on the water ski tour.
Well, we didn't have it in '92. '93, to my knowledge, the tournament in Dallas
was the first time a wakeboarding.
Yeah, they had put Eric Perez, the kneeboarders and the wakeboarders were doing an exhibition at the tournament, and we had those at Soda Lakes tournaments when we had the pro tour there, which was incredible, a beautiful venue for it, but that got halted because somebody parked on a cactus, and it was the end of the world for that.
Welcome to Colorado. But yeah, so 93 is their first time wakeboarding's part of it, and at that point in time, they're still being towed behind a water ski boat.
With no tower and no extended pole.
And I would challenge anybody who still wakeboards at this point, go ahead and go hook a rope to the back of your boat on the short pylon, not on the tower, and go try to do a flip.
Yeah, it takes a lot of skill.
A lot of skill, a lot of work. You got to be able to spin really fast. So that's the original tour.
Yes.
And then the tower comes along.
Right.
Tell me what you remember about the tower. Remember that Nautique had the first pattern?
Nautique had the first one, and everybody kind of panicked. But you know what? Nautique, you know, they're even better today. I have a lot of respect for that boat company. They were kind enough to license it to everybody else. They could have just kept it and buried everybody, because nobody, the pole would do this to the boat. The tower had 4 points.
The pylon came up first.
Yeah.
So we took a ski pylon that was right behind the direct drive, or right in front of the direct drive motor. And then a pylon went on top of that and made it go up high, and it'd have straps going to all four corners of the boat. That was the original that got you up, and they realized they could flip easier, and wakeboarding was easier.
It's pulling you up when you jump, not pulling you down. The other one would pull, you know, you're here and the pylon's here.
So this is the beginning. This is when water skiing kind of starts to become the dinosaur. It's on its way out. Wakeboarding is climbing fast. Then Nautique does the tower. The flight control tower. Patented. It was the original one. And I believe, I don't remember the whole story, but did that not come from somebody taking an old damaged tuna tower off of an ocean boat?
That's one of the rumors that I've heard, and that makes a lot of sense, because they're in Florida, and they had a lot of crossover there, and that's what I heard. It came off a fishing boat, and they said, hey, this works pretty well. And, you know, when the tower happened, man, that was a beautiful time, because all of a sudden you had wrecks, you had biminis, you had all these things going on the tower, you had aftermarket towers, so a guy like me had a whole bunch more stuff to sell to make money on and service.
Yeah.
And the industry is just exploding. I mean, sometime in there, your dad, the light went on with him. He said, you know, I can sell motorcycles, but nobody's really doing this stuff down here in Pueblo. I think I'm going to give it a crack, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that was more of a, I think Dad at that point was in the motorcycle business and had an offer to buy the motorcycle business out, and didn't know if he wanted to or not, but decided to sell. And then I remember being a young man, and my take was always that we'll get Dad on this podcast at one time and get his story, but I think he could only mow the lawn so many times in a summer. So he needed something else to do, and that's when boats came along. Odd thing about that was that we were a boating family, and I grew up at the lake every weekend.
Right.
Until we got a boat dealership.
Yeah, and then now you work all the time.
We stopped going to the lake. But yeah, so those towers came along. That takes wakeboarding to the next level. That takes accessories to the next level. Now we're pushing in through late 90s, early 2000s. And then tell us about the rest of the progression. Tell us where wakeboarding goes. Where does Tommy's go?
Well, you know, another cool story, if to roll the reel back, is we had the first contest at Cottonwood Lake up in Brighton, and I'm trying to figure the exact year on that. It's back in the 80s, but that's when we formed the World Skiboarding Association first, and we used Jimmy Redmond's logo and everything, which became the World Wakeboarding Association shortly after that. And the reason it got changed from skiboarding to wakeboarding is Tony Finn was involved with a company called Kransco, and they had all the rights, and they had, because he was working with them, they had the rights to that name, skiboarding. And so, well, let's change it to wakeboarding. Todd Wetherill was the first president elected, and Pat McElhenney's wife, Stacy. And they merged with the tour, the WWA and the tour. So they had a body of guys there was some snowboard experience and surf experience, skate experience, and they came up with the original format. And that got changed, but all these things were kind of growing together. And unfortunately for skiing, instead of the water skiers embracing this, they got really, really nasty. And guys like you and myself, I just looked at extra opportunity. You know, I still did ski tournament here at the lake. We did ski, we did wake, we did barefoot. Anything you could do on the water was part of the tournament. We didn't care. It was equal to us. I love to watch barefooting and participate in it just as much as slalom or wakeboard. But everything was growing and growing, and as time went on, you know, all of a sudden, the wakes were big enough, and a few guys started getting some pretty nice surf rides behind the boats. And I tell you, I think the surfing edition has really fostered the growth of the industry. Because you remember, I mean, boats used to be 40, 50, $60,000. I mean, I'm not even going to say what they are now because I don't know. I'm completely out of it.
It's a different world. I remember, you know, I came back to work for Dad in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, you know, working with Bill Campbell,
mm-hmm.
working for my dad at the time, and you know, we're selling Moombas and Supras, and you know, 2010, you know, the top of the line Supra was $65,000.
And that was everything.
It was everything you could imagine. The nicest tower, the nicest speakers,
the
heaters, all the bells and whistles. And I remember it didn't take long, but I remember in 2013, I remember when we broke the $100,000 mark, and I remember ordering one, like you said, I remember ordering one and going, how am I going to sell this?
Right, what if
like
they
my
want...
head's going like, what am I going to do? Like, this is over 100,000, and now, you know, certain manufacturers out there, not Teak, you know, they build that beautiful Paradigm. It's Paragon, excuse me. Gorgeous boat. I don't know if you've been.
But it's over 3. I've just seen it. I'm afraid to get up in it even with my shoes off.
I think they're over 4 at this point for one of those Paragons. You know, and you know, you got, you know, mini boats between the 3 and 4 range. And, you know, Supras hanging out between 200 and 300. Moombas are 100 to 2, depending, you know, 100 to 150. So it's wild the way that's changed. But surfing has really opened the doors to that. I remember, you know, us freshwater pirates out here in these big open lakes, not these private little things that we got. But, you know, we would get up early, boaters.
Just to get glass.
Just to get glass. You would be out to the water. If you weren't on the water by 7 a.m., you were way behind.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we would do. And then when the water started to get choppy, we would surf by listing the boat as far over as we could and
turning slightly into it.
It wasn't much of a wave, but that's what we did when you couldn't wakeboard anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And now,
that's all you do.
Is what you do when you get bored with surfing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Nick? Interesting enough is the wakes got bigger and bigger. I had a conversation with a bunch of pro wakeboarders. I believe it was about 2014, maybe 15, when the Tommies opened their store just north of Orlando at that location. I was down there and I said, guys, how do you train on these monster wakes? And they said, we don't. It's survival. We do a lot of stuff on the trampoline, and we do all this other work, balance work, and we go out and we try tricks a few times, and some things we can make, but we build our run on not getting hurt, because every one of these guys has had every reconstructive surgery you can imagine. And I think that's a big shift. A paradigm shift is all of a sudden everybody was getting hurt wakeboarding.
Right.
Now a lot of guys got hurt slalom skiing and barefooting, But the amount of guys that were good, that were blowing out knees and getting hurt, that was a big paradigm shift because you really don't get hurt surfing.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. But I think with that too, then you mentioned that, as you come into the 2012, 13, 14, wakes are getting bigger. Surfing's kind of starting to come along. I remember, 2013, I believe Nautique released the G series, and that was the biggest boat any of us had ever seen. Couldn't even believe what that was. And everything started to get bigger from there. But along with that, you got the professionals down in Orlando training on trampolines and just trying not to get hurt. But on the video, it's so effortless and it looks so smooth that the guys back home, they want to make a run at it and don't realize how hard that is.
Yeah.
And how much you can damage yourself. And I think we kind of started to see wakeboarding taper off. And again, surfing, you don't get hurt, which is great for the whole family.
Right.
Mom and dad can do it along with the son and daughter instead of dad buying a boat so that his son can be a great wakeboarder.
Yeah, do it on a paddleboard even. In fact, if I have a beginner, I stick them on a 10-foot paddleboard and I pull them 1 mile an hour just to build their confidence.
Yeah. And
then it's a smaller paddleboard, and then it's a surfboard, and then all of a sudden, because they've built confidence, we teach them to surf. But I tell you, another interesting paradigm shift I saw is a lot of the competitive skiers, they would ski 2, maybe 3 sets a day, and they were spread out. Because to slalom ski, you have to be physically warmed up and ready. Everything has to be perfect. The conditions have to be good, the driver, the weight of the boat, everything. Well, when they get done, they're still at the lake. And all of a sudden, guys like T-Gas, they're going out and surfing for the rest of the day. They're all out there playing and they got the music on. And I always thought, man, that is so interesting that these guys love it so much. They'll go do this, but they will not wakeboard. 6'4", trying a flip on the wakeboard is not always a good outcome. You big guys are better for big guy sports. Most of the good wakeboarders were my size or a little bit bigger. They're squirts.
that quantified the reason I was never a great wakeboarder. Tommy just gave me permission to be a That's it. For the history of everybody that knows me out there, my size is the reason I wasn't a good wakeboarder.
Well, you're at a physics play comes into it. It's just harder to turn this over and over versus this. I mean, it's just simple as that.
Yeah. So what year did you start Tommy Slalom Shop?
81.
81, and what year did you sell it?
Sold it in 2012, September 11th.
September 11th, 2012.
Yeah.
And then tell me about the journey since selling it.
Well, I had some pretty serious health issues, Nick. Most of those are resolved now. And I'm telling you, the stress is, I bet you go through it too. It just wore me down. Because you never have a vacation if you're in the boating business. You pretend you do. But if you leave the store, you're doing this all day and all night, right? It's, well, how much does he want for the trade? Well, what happened? He took it out the first time and all this stuff happened or whatever. And it just wore me down. And I said, you know what? I got a pretty good piece of property here. I got the lake down in Pueblo. Man, it's a good time to sell. But that process took me 5 years to find a buyer. It was extremely difficult. The banks will not loan money on a boat dealership. You got to find somebody with pockets. And I learned that the hard way. I had several deals go south. And every time a deal would go south, it would just crush me. But finally, the good Lord put Mr. Borish, Matt Borish, who bought my store and was very kind to me, honored his word, shook my hand, looked in my eyes. In fact, we met. I had 5 people looking at my dealership all the same day. And when I met him and his father-in-law and a couple other guys he brought with him, I said, man, that's the guys I want to sell the business to. We met at a Mexican restaurant on I-70 as they were leaving town. I got them on the phone, and they were at Sheridan. I said, well, get off on Federal. And I met him up there, and we got a napkin and wrote the deal up on the napkin. And he sent me his letter of intention exactly at 10 o'clock that night, honoring his word. And, and I held on, and I did consulting for 2 or 3 years. And that was a lot of fun because I got to go to all the grand openings and everything, and that was pretty cool. But, man, I really don't like getting on a lot of airplanes anymore, so that kind of tapered off. And really, I don't think I have a lot to contribute anymore to the boating industry. I think most of my cards are played. Maybe there's a little advice I could give or something, but I think the good Lord has other things in mind for me. And going through the fire of owning your own business, it's really hard and really brutal, but man, when you move through the fire, you become tempered steel. Because regular steel's brittle, and I was brittle for a long time, but going through those fires, and I think the greatest lesson I learned, other than trust the Lord, was the ability to have a disaster in your business and that become the biggest blessing. Because I firmly believe, my dad taught me that as a kid, and I didn't believe him as a kid. He says, son, when something bad like this happens, you got to look on the other side of the door. And I got in a habit of, instead of saying, Nick, well, why did this happen to me? And how come I get all the bad breaks? And why can't these boat manufacturers to do this? And why doesn't so-and-so think this? I started asking, how can I make my dealership great? What about this disaster can I learn to become better than everybody else in the business? So all of those disasters in solving those problems prepared me for the last chapter of my life. And I think the last chapter, which is serving the Lord Jesus Christ. Whew, I get emotional. That's the chapter I'm most excited, because it goes on forever. So
we're going to jump onto that podcast next, and that'll be on the Faith in the Fast Life podcast, if you guys want to catch that story. But I want to touch on that note of you talk about being forged in the fire of what the dealership goes through, and just the principle of the dealership and those things. And I think the lesson here to the listener is it's just how important it is to not just the boat that you buy, but the dealership you buy from.
Bingo.
Because at the end of the day, these boats are built by humans in the United States of America, and yes, they're at a premium dollar. And when you spend that much money, sure, we all wish that they were perfect, that there was never a problem. But they're built by humans. And they rattle on a trailer down the road, and they get plugged into the water, and electronics are near water, and rough waters, and rain, and wind, and whatever else. And at the end of the day, sometimes things goes wrong. And it's not if it's going to go wrong, it's when it's going to go wrong.
Yeah, it's going to go wrong.
The big question is, who's going to take care of you when it does go wrong?
That's a fabulous question, and I think that's the strength of your dealership, that it was the strength of mine. I mean, I watched your dad in the motorcycle business. I watched him look people in the eye and shake their hands. I watched him make things right. And when you find a dealership like yours that every single handshake, the intent is to honor that word and keep that word and give them the experience they deserve, it is far, far better to buy from somebody like you than finding your boat on some clearing shop. Some guy that bought up somebody's inventory that went bankrupt or whatever. I mean, I'm sure you get those boats in too. They come in the shrink wrap. Hey, man, I stole this thing at an auction. And they don't realize that it takes 3 or 4 hours on every single new boat of just water testing and fixing and tweaking every single thing that vibrates loose, whether it's coming from Tennessee or wherever. Those are long, hard trips on those semis. And you know, you go out in Pueblo Reservoir and the wind that we're having today, you got a real good chance of shaking something loose.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, if they can come to your dealership with people that have integrity and really care, you guys are gonna fix it. You're gonna fix it as quick as possible. It's gonna be done right. And you're gonna follow up and say, hey man, have you had it back out the water? How's that vibration? Did we get it solved? Great, well, vibration solved, but you know, this mirror keeps coming loose. Hey, we'll get you another mirror bracket or whatever. The relationship with your local dealer is worth the extra $16 it cost you for a boat or whatever. You know, you really don't save anything by buying an auction boat.
Right. Yeah, and having a relationship, whether it's us or any other dealership, you want a dealer who's going to take care of you and stand behind you. So it's important. But Tommy, I think our time frame here,
We're winding down.
We're winding down. We had a great interview with you. I really appreciate you doing with us.
Man, what an honor, Nick. It's been an honor to watch you grow up under your dad's leadership and go through your challenges, and I'm really proud of you, buddy.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much for being with us today.
God bless you, man.
Yeah, thanks, brother.